Now, before we start discussing the same subject which we were discussing yesterday, I have to render a very, very sincere apology about all that I said about Shab Barat. It was the first time that I realized that I had never investigated into what this thing was. You see, never in my life I got interested, because in Ahmadis, among Ahmadis, there are no such rights whatsoever, which are not found at the time of Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's lifetime or at the time of Sahaba. So there are many such superstitious things and rites which have found their way into Muslim culture, which we passed by, seeing people dancing and singing and throwing some crackers, firecrackers and things in Lahore, Karachi and other cities, but I never took any interest in that because I thought, I don't know what they are doing about. This is not Islam anyway. So that is why I was caught completely unawares by this question, and all that offered was a guesswork. But at the same time I inquired from the ulama in Rabwa that they should investigate this and let me know what it is, because all I said was just a guess. So now I have received a full report on this. Incidentally, the verse of the surah of the Quran to which they refer this incident, this practice or this tradition, has nothing to do with the contents of the concept of Shab Barat. Nothing whatsoever. It is a completely a verse which applies to a completely different situation. And no way can you draw the meaning which they attribute to it when you read it together with the verses which speak of Laylatul Qadr. So on this verse I have already spoken at length, and I won't dream of anybody attributing this thing to these verses. So that is first of all my apology about this. I will quote first the verse, then the so-called traditions which they quote in favor of celebrating this day, as you just mentioned, or that night, as a night where just for no rhyme or reason God descends from his heaven, comes close to the earth and forgives the criminals right and left, countlessly. Now this is the myth they have built around this verse. So I'll come to that later on. But first of all, let me read the verses of the Holy Quran to which they attribute Shab Barat. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Hamim wal kitabil mubin. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatin mubarakatin. Inna anzalnahu fi laylatin. Anzalna what? The Holy Quran. And don't you remember the verses about Laylatul Qadr, that is the night in which the Holy Quran is revealed. So I'm amazed how can they miss this connection. It's so clear. Everything about this account is a reminder of Surah Laylatul Qadr. Fiha yufraqu kullu amrin hakim. Amram min indina inna kunna mursalin rahmatan min rabbik innahu huwas samiul alim. याद तो है मुझे, मैं फिर भी कहता हूँ इन्ना अंज़लनाहु फी लैलतिल क़द्र वमा अदराका मा लैलतुल क़द्र लैलतुल क़द्र खैरुम मिन अल्फ़ि शहर تنزل الملائکۃ والروح فیہا بإذن ربہم من کل امر، من کل امر سلام حتی مطلع الفجر. So this amr yufruku fiha yufruku kullu amrin hakim, the same thing is mentioned also in Surah Al-Laylatul Qadr. So the same subject is discussed in Surah Ad-Dukhan, which is discussed also in Laylatul Qadr. Why in Surah Ad-Dukhan again has some deep significance, of which I have already spoken. I won't repeat that, but I have told you this is the chapter of the Holy Quran, the first few verses of which are reported by the ulama nowadays to have contained the authority for celebrating this night, which is called the night of Barat, or what else? Laylatul Barat, Shab Barat or Laylatul Barat, that's right. They say, I'm now quoting from them, Encyclopedia, Islamic Encyclopedia as Sayyid Qasim Mahmud, which was published by Shahkar Book Foundation, Karachi. We have got this excerpt from them. It says that in lunar years, on the 8th month, which is Shaban, the 15th night is the night which the Holy Quran declares as Shab Barat. See, 15th of Shaban every year, according to the lunar month, is the night which is referred to in the Holy Quran over there, which I mentioned. This night on each matter which is to be decided, a decision is taken by God, and the angels are told that, look here, I have taken the decision on this and that and that and that, so you better begin to implement the decisions as I have instructed you. And that is what they say, what they think God says to the angels. On that night, the decrees are passed on the fate of the people, the countries, their divisions, what may happen to them, and everything, including groups, big and small, nations and individuals. All decisions are taken on that night for the whole year. So the fate is being created by God according to them, year after year after year. Every year he decided that in Europe, Germany should do this, and France should do this, and Belgium should do that, and in the continent of America, such and such countries should do this. Among the Muslim countries, this should happen to that country and that country. Israel should do this. So if taken literally, it would mean that all the cruelties committed by big countries and all the injustices committed against poor nations are not decided in Washington or London or Cologne or Bonn, etc. They're all decided by God on the night which is mentioned here of Shaban. So it goes on that Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instructed to keep a fast on that night, on the following day, And it is reported in the tradition that God descends to the lowest heaven closest to earth on that night, and calls all the mankind to come and have their sins forgiven. And this night is referred to as Laylatul Barat, which means the night of forgiveness, right? This is what the encyclopedia says about it. So we had some investigation made into the original sources from which they have taken up this. And of the original sources, the verses of the Quran I've already read. This practice is based on certain traditions which are reported in Kanzul Ummal and Sunan ibn Majah, right? When was Sunan ibn Majah compiled?
150 or 200.
Around 200 years or less. Certainly not in the first century. This I know. In second or third century. The question is that if you accept these traditions as true, as genuine observations of Hazrat Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why did he and his companions and Khulafa never celebrated the Shab Barat as it is being celebrated today? Why do we read any account in the history of the early Islam that this was the day which was celebrated by the entire world of Islam? Because it was fresh in their minds, they should have done it, they should have practiced it. No hadith tells about Hazrat Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam celebrating that night like they say it should be celebrated. And as far as the authenticity of the reporters is concerned, these traditions are reported by some narrators about whom the great Muslim scholars have declared that they are not worthy of trust. Some of them concocted things. Some of them had not sound memories. So there are quite a few in the line who are declared as untrustworthy by the great Muslim scholars, and I'll quote from them. وہ جو ہے اس پہ تنقید روات پر وہ کہاں ہے؟
وہ تو یہاں یہ صرف بریفلی منشن کیا تھا کہ ضعیف ہے.
نہیں, I have read that. I got this with me. But I think I have left it in my office. Otherwise, I just received it just yesterday or today. I don't know. It was received yesterday, I think. I'm sorry for this blunder of leaving the criticism behind, or it is here and I can't find it. One paper is missing. So we may return to it tomorrow. As far as the criticism of Hadith is concerned, I must also read from Hazrat Muslim Maud what he has to say about this. He never celebrated Shab Barat, nor did any Ahmadi ever celebrate the Shab Barat as it is being celebrated. All that the Ahmadis do is that they pray tahajjud, and those who can keep a fast, they keep fast. That's all there is to it. All the tales and stories and myths woven around this night are absolutely false. That night which those verses mention is the night of Laylatul Qadr, and that is Qadr, Taqdeer, which is decided not about everybody on the same night, people and nations. It is the qadr of the person who receives the blessing of that night, which is, according to God, turned into a morning which never ends. It's a morning which covers all his life. So the night of every person who has the blessing of observing Laylatul Qadr is transformed into a bright, brilliant day of Allah's light. That is the essence of that surah, and it is the same thing which is being referred to here in this night, because the Holy Quran was revealed not on the 15th of Shaban. It was revealed during Laylatul Qadr. There are no two opinions about it. So that is enough proof that whatever said other than this has to be rejected as false, because the verses of the Quran are fundamental to our understanding of everything in Islam. So these verses of Surah Al-Dukhan and the verses of Surah Laylatul Qadr speak of the revelation of the Quran in that night. It has to be one night. It could not be the night of Shaban. So all traditions or supposed traditions which speak of these verses as relating to Shaban have to be rejected as impossible. Because Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who was the recipient of Laylatul Qadr, how could he misunderstand it? And how could he say that the Quran was not revealed during this night, but it was revealed on that night, which is a different one? So this is in brief my argument about this. So this Shab Barat. But as far as the criticism of Hadith and the reporters is concerned, we will return to this subject later on. Please. They say, they speak of Shaban, but they do not speak of those verses having been revealed concerning Shaban and that particular night. But they have guessed this. I'll read the original Hadith. The Hadith speaks of Shaban and the 15th of Shaban, but does not relate to the verses which are quoted by the ulama or encyclopedia, which I have just mentioned. This is what has to be clarified. According to this hadith, which is taken from Ibn Majah, God descends to the lower heaven on the night of 15th of Shaban every year and announces, "Who is there who seeks my forgiveness from all sins?" I'll forgive all his sins. This is the commitment. Whoever does so, he'll be forgiven. Whoever wants more provisions of wealth, food and things, he should ask and it will be his for the asking. He just open his lips and should open his lips or her lips and I'll give it to him or her. And the third, whoever is sick and ill, he should beg of me today, now, this moment, that, oh God, cure me of every illness, and I'll cure. This hadith, number one, has been criticized by the Aimma who deal with the subject of authenticity of reporters. Hazrat Imam Ahmad speaks of Ibn Abi Yusra, who is one of the reporters, as not only weak of trust, but he says he used to concoct traditions. So this is the main tradition on which they bank. And one of the reporters is said to have been renowned or notorious for concocting traditions. So how can you shape the destiny of the Ummah based on this tradition which has such a reporter? And secondly, there is another hadith which does not go into all this detail that God does this and that, but which still speaks of this night. It says, Rasulullah sallallahu Abu Musa Ashari reports that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that no doubt Allah Jalla Shanuhu descends or appears on the night of Shaban, and on that night he forgives without anybody asking. He forgives the sins of all the people of the world, except those who have held partners with him. The rest is all forgiven. So you can see the contradiction between the two hadiths and the impossibility of this subject itself to be believed and taken seriously. And on the reporters, Abdullah bin Rabia and Walid bin Muslim, both are rejected as trustworthy by Zahaq, who is an expert on these things. Just a minute, I'm sorry. Not only this, Zahaq is not a scholar. Zahaq is a reporter among them. And the scholar who criticizes, his name is not mentioned, unfortunately. That is why when I read in the end that it is Zahaq, I thought it was the same, some scholar. This is all that it says, and it finishes here is that the scholars who criticize this hadith, they also mention the fact that Zahaq is one of the reporters who reports it from Hazrat Abu Musa Ashari, and it is established beyond a shadow of doubt that Zahaq never met Abu Musa in his life. See? Now this is as far as the technicality is concerned. As far as the nature of the subject of discussion is concerned, there is no need for any discussion in depth, because apparently they are absolutely rejectable on the authority of the Quran. Because the Holy Quran speaks of forgiveness and punishment in so many different places, and it does not mention anywhere that God forgives people mechanically like this. On one particular night He will descend at a certain time, and then people, whether they ask forgiveness or not, He goes and forgives them all their sins. This could not have been the word of Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's impossible. because it's against the Quran. The whole philosophy of seeking forgiveness and forgiveness on the part of God is denied in this tradition if it is taken seriously. So this goes for the authenticity of the celebration of the night. But as far as the fasting in that on the following day is concerned and special prayer, this might have been true. On that much we have no objection. But the verses are certainly not related to this night. They are related to Laylatul Qadr and to nothing else. Please. Now, as far as the forgiveness of sins is concerned, there is something related, is something between God and man. Now we know it is against the clear verdict of the Quran that any such thing could happen here on earth. That at one night everybody is forgiven. But still we don't know. Whatever decision God takes, we don't see the signs of that appearing on earth. But one thing we know, that if all are forgiven, all of them who are forgiven the night before commit the same sins again the day following. There is no change whatsoever in the behavior. According to this tradition, all the dwellers of Israel who are monotheists, they must also be forgiven, because every human is forgiven. So lucky are those who die the same night. Congratulations. But those who live to see the next day and commit the same crimes which they have been doing, woe to them, poor things. It's all nonsense. And what else? Do you find any change in the financial position of the Muslims the day on the day which follows this night? Has anybody reported that Alhamdulillah last night I danced and sang and did this and that on Shab Barat and threw crackers, firecrackers, and look here I have got so much money and wealth and I've got everything now. Does it ever happen anywhere in the world? So how could it be the word of Muhammad Rasulullah? Have you ever seen terminally ill patients of cancer and other diseases, the Muslims particularly, walk out of the hospitals and special care units saying Alhamdulillah, because of Shab Barat I'm cured? How could this be true? If the realities of life give it a lie, how could this be the word of Muhammad Sallallahu? It has to be the word of a concoctor, like the one I mentioned, and not the word of Rasulullah Sallallahu. Please.